Hello and welcome to October 2023. My name is Lynette and I am reading from the Love Exquisite Magazine, and I'm reading the article titled Clarity, which is written in the For the Love of Relationships section. This is a good one. Clarity, clarity. Through effective communication, it's a difference between just communication and effective communication. Sometimes you might hear me say effective communication, but what my mean is effective communication. So we can have clarity about things that we do not fully understand when we know how to effectively communicate. It is important that when you do not fully understand something, that you do not assume. Instead of assuming, ask clarifying questions until you get to the point where you fully understand the situation or circumstances. This is extremely important, and I hope this blesses someone in their relationship as well as in their friendships or whatever you have when you're communicating with one another, in relationships, even at work. And I'm not talking about, you know, serious relationships. I'm talking about just in fellowship and communication with each other. So communication is across the board. There's no type of situation where we don't have to communicate with something or someone. So here we go. So instead of assuming, oh Lord, because we assume a lot of things, and we sometimes we think we right, but when you assume, you don't have the facts, because if you had the facts you wouldn't have to assume. You would know. There's a difference between knowing and assuming. So do not assume. You ask questions so you can get to the facts. That's the bulk of this whole conversation. So again, back to the article. So instead of assuming, ask clarifying questions. A lot of people don't like to ask questions. They say, I shouldn't have to ask. Yes, you should. And you know why? Because I'm not you and you're not me. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not in your head and you're not in mine. So let's talk. It's okay to talk and talk it out. That is effective communication. And effective communication also requires listening skills. So just as much as we want to be heard, we also should be receptive to listening to someone else. So back to the article. So these are jewels that I'm dropping. So I hope y'all are listening, and I hope that it helps. So again, instead of assuming, ask clarifying questions until you get to the point where you fully understand the situation or circumstance. So if it's something you don't understand and you need to ask more questions, ask more questions. This is not only in the classroom. This is not only in the bedroom. This is not only at the job. This is in life in general. Somebody says something to you or does something, and you're like, why did you even do that? Ask questions. Don't feel like, I don't want to seem like I'm nagging, or I don't want to seem like I'm asking too many questions. If you don't understand the situation fully, it is important that you ask questions for clarity. And this is what this article is about. So when you assume, you have to know that sometimes what you are assuming is not accurate. You have to know that. So some people say, oh, I got intuition. My intuition is telling me. Do you have the facts? Despite your intuition, do you have the facts? Did you see it? Did you hear it firsthand? Firsthand, or did somebody tell you something, or were you in the experience before with someone else and now you're projecting? So you really have to know. You cannot assume. If you assume, well, you know what they say, when you assume, you make a bleep out of you and me. Y'all get what I'm saying to you. That's the worst thing that you can do in relationships, is go based on assumptions. And I can't say that I'm not guilty of having done it in the past. I have. Somebody that I really really liked. They were doing, I'm always transparent, so they were in something. I can't, because you can't say too much, because y'all gonna be like, oh, I know what you're talking about. My business is my business. But at any rate, I thought it was something that they had done, and they were like doing it with somebody else, and I was kind of like, wait a minute, hold on, what's going on here? And they was trying to tell me, no, this happened a long time ago, and I'm like, no, I'm watching it in real time and present. This happened in real time, and there's nothing that this person could tell me, and I'm assuming, and they're steady telling me, no, listen, this is was a long time ago. And then I'm like, no, I see it right now, and blah blah blah. Come to find out, I was wrong. It was a long time ago, because as you do the research and you get to the facts, you realize, oh, okay, I apologize, I was wrong. I jumped out the jet a little bit quicker than I should have. Well, I shouldn't even jumped out the jet. I should have asked clarifying questions, and I should have allowed you to tell me what actually was going on, what actually happened. But I assumed, and that probably was the breakdown and break up, or breaking point, I should say, of our relationship that we never recovered from. So this is why I give you information, so you don't do the same mistakes that I made. I give it all to you to try to help you out, because it helped me now to know what not to do moving forward. So that's something that we should all do in life, is learn from our mistakes so that we won't repeat them. So I'm giving you the jewels, giving you the jewels. Now what you do with them is your own business, but I'm trying to say, don't go this way, go this way. No shade, no hate, no nothing. I want everybody to win. I want everybody to be happy, because we all deserve that. So I give this to you for free. If you ever wanted to know why I'm doing this for you. I'm giving this to you for free, so we can all be better people. That's why. So back to the article. So when you assume, you have to know that sometimes what you are assuming is not accurate. Therefore, you should ask questions, even when you think you know the answer. Even when you think you know the answer. Ask questions. And the key part of that whole sentence is when you think you know. Because thinking and knowing are two different things. Keep that in mind. So again, therefore, you should ask questions. So knowing the answer and thinking you know the answer are two different things. So I'm going to say that for the people in the back. Knowing the answer and thinking you know the answer are two different things. When you assume, you are demonstrating what you think you know. When you assume, you are demonstrating what you think you know. But when you know, you have fact-based evidence to support your claims without making any assumptions. I tell you, I'll give it to you. In a relationship, do not be afraid to talk with your mate about anything. No topic should be off limits. No topic. So when you know how to effectively communicate, you should be able to talk to your mate about anything under the sun. Anything. So keeping in mind that compassion, understanding, empathy, all of these must be components of the conversation when you're discussing topics that may be difficult or not easy to talk about. So you have to be understanding, you have to be compassionate, you have to approach it with an empathetic spirit. So never assume that someone should know what your intentions are. Never assume that, this is important. So never assume that someone should know what your intentions are. Never assume that someone should know how you feel. And never assume that they should know why you feel how you feel. Like, again, no one is a mind reader. Your mate is not a mind reader or a fortune teller or a psychic. Despite how well he or she might know you or how long you've been together, you might hear people say, well, they should know by now. Maybe they should. However, because they're not you, they don't know. You just have to assume. Now, I just said don't assume, and now I'm telling you to assume. But know this, they don't know. They don't always know. So sometimes you might have to tell them, time and time again. Why do I always have to tell you? Because you do, period. Like the why X why. If this is what works for me, then try to compromise and have empathy and understanding to share it with me again. Don't assume, well, you should know what I like. Have you told me what you like? Or because me watching and observing is not always enough. Well, I like this because you seen me. We went here this many times, and you. Well, how do I know that that was something that you enjoyed unless you effectively communicated and said, you know what, I love when we do this. I love it when we go away together and go to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that is. I don't know. You could just be coming along because you were trying to make me happy. It doesn't always mean that you enjoy those moments. It doesn't mean that Bonefish Grill could be one of my favorite restaurants. You might not like Bonefish Grill, but because you love me, you're going to sacrifice and you're going to take me to Bonefish Grill. Then if we went there 1,000 times, am I then to assume, oh, this must be one of his favorite restaurants too? No, you might like to go to Ruth Chris Steakhouse, to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. I won't know that unless you communicate. So that is important. Do not assume. That's why I said do not assume that the person should know you. I don't care how long they've known you. They're not a mind reader or a psychic. So when you are communicating with your partner, make sure that you create a safe space for them to openly discuss their thoughts and ideas without judgment, debate, or accusations or false assumptions, because that's what accusations are. So when you judge them, when you debate them, or when you assume or accuse your mate of doing or saying something, it usually creates a rebuttal response that could lead into an unnecessary argument. So make sure that you fully understand the situation by checking for understanding. To check for understanding, repeat back what your mate said based on how you interpreted their message or their behavior and ask him or her, is this the message that you are trying to convey? And then repeat back to how you interpreted things. So let him or her know that you're trying to gain an understanding so that you know how to appropriately respond to the situation. So this will help the both of you gain an understanding of the intent of the message or behavior. You will learn what the message means when you ask clarifying questions, and your mate will gain an insight on how you interpreted his or her message or behavior. So there are a lot of times in relationships where you and your mate could be saying the same thing, but in different ways. Neither of you are right or wrong. The way you communicate is just different. Put a pin in that, but I'm going to keep going. But that was a message. These are jewels. I'm going to say it again. There are a lot of times in your relationships where you and your mate could be saying the exact same thing. It has the same meaning, but you're saying it in two different ways. So neither of you are right or wrong. It's just the way that you communicate is different, and that is okay. Because of this difference in communication styles, which is why we should always ask for clarity. That way we don't have to assume anything. We don't have to assume your intent behind your message. We ask when you ask questions. So practice effective communication skills to avoid confusion and conflicts in your relationships. Be clear, be honest, be transparent, and be mindful of the words that could have multiple meanings, meaning dual meanings. They could have two different meanings. And know that it is both what you say and how you say it. It's not either or. People usually hear a lot of people say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Well, I believe, in my whole heart of hearts, I believe that it's both. It is what you say and it's also how you say it. For example, you can say something offensive in a nice way. Just because you said it nicely does not mean that it's not offensive. Just because you said it nicely does not mean that what you said is still not wrong or inappropriate. So we have to learn how to effectively communicate with each other in an effort to get the best results from the conversation. So if you want the best results from the conversation, you have to learn how to effectively communicate. Learning how to communicate is an invaluable skill set that is sometimes underrated. It is so important, though. However, communication is a critical component in every relationship that you will encounter in life. If people cannot talk to you without you becoming aggressive, accusatory, offensive, defensive, or argumentative, you will find that no one wants to talk to you because they be like, you can't talk to him, you can't talk to her, you can't talk to them. They just won't listen. They're hard headed or something like that. They'll say you just can't talk to because I know if you say this, they going to assume you mean this. You know what I mean? They're ticking time bomb, whatever the situation is. So effective communication requires, ooh, yes. Effective communication requires emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. Because when you communicate with others, you have to be able to manage your emotions appropriately and appropriately respond to the person and appropriately diffuse conflict situations that may arise. So you have to, oftentimes somebody else might upset us, but we take it out on the closest person to us, even if it's not that person who upset us. So this is where emotional intelligence come in. You have to know how to manage your emotions when you're communicating. It is important to stay in the present of the conversation. So the person that you're communicating with now, if you are communicating with them and they've done absolutely nothing to you to warrant the response that you might give them because of somebody else or what somebody else said or what somebody else did or past traumas, displaced anger is the worst type of anger. So stay in the present. Stay in the present of the conversation and what's going on in that current moment. Not what happened to you, not what somebody else did to you. Stay in the present of the conversation. So it is important to, again, stay in the present so that you don't wrongfully lash out on someone who did not deserve that type of response. Stay present. Some people have triggers. So when you're communicating with people, some people have triggers. So they either have triggers from their past traumas, and anything that you say to them could trigger them to respond in a negative way. You don't even have to be the person who caused the trigger. You know, if someone else did something to them, they're easily triggered by something that you might say or something that you might do causes them to reflect back when someone else said it or when someone else did it. And now you get the bulk of, you get to bear that, that fight. You get that fight that they probably should have gave to somebody else who actually started the trigger in the first place. But anyway. Or this also can happen. They could assume that because of how they are or how they think that what you say or do is similar to how they think. But if you're not them, again, and they're not you, don't assume that, well, if I would have did it this way, or I would have said it this way, and I would have meant it this way, then they must mean it this way too. They're not you. So anyway, we really have to check ourselves in a lot of different ways, but communication is one of the key components. So they can assume that what you say to them warrants their triggered response because they're interpreting the conversation based on their perception as well as how they communicate with others. So if a person has a nasty attitude and they always getting smart with somebody, as soon as you say something to them, they might assume, oh, you getting smart? But it's like, no, you asked me a question and I'm responding to the question that you asked me. But because they would have gotten smart, they assume that you're getting smart too. You understand what I'm saying? So never assume. No, especially if you know the person. If you know that's not the person's character that you're talking to, and that person is not the person who would generally pop off because you would pop off, Don't put it on them and say they will pop off. They're 9 times out of 10, their action is a reaction to what you're doing and saying. So keep that in mind. If you know this person is usually calm and level-headed, don't say, "Oh, you getting smart." You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not even their character. It's your character is not there. So you have to stay present and current. And know the person that you're communicating with and know their personality characteristics so that you know where the conversation is coming from, whether it's coming from a good place or a not so good place. I'll just say that. So let me go back. Or they assume that they warrants the triggers, blah blah blah, based on their perception. So they could also be triggered because of how someone else inappropriately communicates with them, not understanding in that present moment that you are not them, nor are you the person who created the triggers in the first place. So direct your anger towards who it needs to be directed to, period. But I'm going to keep going. But I just need that was a message. So the unfortunate thing about people who have triggers when communicating is that as soon as you match their energy, they view you as the person with the problem. I'm going to say that again. The unfortunate thing about people who have triggers when communicating is that as soon as you match their energy, they view you as the one with the problem. Ain't that the truth? So it is important. I'm clapping. Yes, Mom. This is when I get excited. It is important to check your own mood. Check your own mood. What is your reaction? What is your response? What is your initial response to a conversation? Is something that someone says, are you easily triggered and you just blow off steam immediately? Well, when somebody else responds to that with steam, don't look at them as the bad person. You don't start none, won't be none. So you got to learn how to effectively communicate. Don't look at them and not look at yourself. Check your own mood. That's basically what I'm saying. Stay present in a conversation and know how to handle people who are easily triggered. So unless it is something personal, people, especially your mate, should be able to ask you anything without you responding to current questions in an inappropriate, childlike manner. Because when you can't communicate as an adult, it's not good. When you are an adult, you should be able to communicate as an adult. We shouldn't go to childlike mannerisms. That's not good. So if there's a question that you don't understand, and that when you're communicating with someone, please ask for clarity before you react to a situation that is not that deep. Ask yourself before you pop off. Ask yourself, is what my mate asking me really that deep? It usually isn't. So your response shouldn't be that deep either. So ask for clarity so you can keep the peace in your relationship. I can't reiterate that enough. It is okay to say, I don't understand what you're asking of me. I don't understand what you mean by when you say XYZ, whatever the XYZ is. Can you explain to me so that I don't make up my own assumptions? Can we communicate about what it is that you are upset about? Can we talk about it? Can we get an understanding on where it came from so that I don't assume something that is inaccurate? And when your mate does this, your response should not be, "Oh, you understand. Don't act dumb." Sometimes when we in the heat of the moment and you like, "Well, wait a minute, I don't understand." Or, you like, "Well, explain a little bit. Like, what is it? Don't act dumb. Mm-mm. Don't do that, because what happens is you shut them down. Now you're going to have a problem with communication. So you want to always leave that safe space and just explain Explain. Let them know this is what I meant when I said this. This is what I meant when I did this. This is the message that I was trying to convey. And then your response shouldn't be, whatever. You should take it for face value and just move on. Period. A lot of times we want to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But when you do that, you're not getting anywhere. You have the same unresolved issues until you learn how to effectively communicate with one another. So instead of your response being negative, it should always be an explanation that where you're rephrasing in a very detailed way to clarify the question and avoid confusion. So if you say something to me and I say, I'm not understanding what it is that you're trying to say, don't say the same thing the same way, because I didn't understand it the first time you said it. So the important thing to do is to rephrase what you said. Say it in a different way that may help me understand it. Give me a little bit more details. There's people who are detail oriented and they need one, step two, step three, so you be patient with that person to avoid conflict and just explain. Just say, you know what, this is what I meant. This is what I'm trying to say. Blah, 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 whatever that is. So it is okay to ask for clarity. So that is written in the For the Love of Relationships section. And I hope this helped people, because a lot of times there's a breakdown in communication. When there is a breakdown in communication, there's a breakdown in the relationship. And it's just as simple as learning how to effectively communicate with each other that can resolve any type of conflict situation. You just have to be willing to listen and learn and communicate in a more effective way, and you'll be fine. So just try to practice as much as you can, even in the heated escalation. Even if you have to say, you know what, this is not a good time to talk about this. Let's revisit it. It's not that you're trying to brush it off or sweep it under the rug. It's just that the conversation is going nowhere when the two of you are yelling over top of each other, or you're talking over top of each other, or you're saying something and the person's not listening, or keep saying, I don't want to talk about it right now. I don't want to talk about it right now. Whatever the situation is, then you say, you know what, I'm going to respect that. But know that we will revisit this conversation at a later time when calmer heads prevail. And as an adult, you should be able to say, okay, and we're going to talk about it, because sometimes when you don't talk about it, it's festering on the inside of you. So you have to talk it out, but in a more effective way. And one way you can do that is by getting clarity on what is being said or what is being done and why. That is clarity. In the Love Exquisite Magazine, the October 2023 issue, I wish you all the best in your relationships. And I hope that you will practice effective communication and get clarity. The first thing to get clarity is to do what? I'm pausing to give y'all opportunity to say the what. Ask clarifying questions. Thank you for listening.